Ooh, baby, coming in hot. After a very controversial episode of Sexoterica, I kind of expected that. Just because... And it was both ways. There are people who absolutely loved it. And then there are people who, as, again, I anticipated, Brian, you're starting a cult. No, God damn it. Shut the fuck up. Like, stop. I don't know. You know, folks, like I've told you, we've got all kinds of stuff to get into in this episode, by the way. Music, maybe some tech. We'll see everything we can get into this Q&A. Okay, but look, I've got to talk about this. Some of the questions. Okay, so Mrs. SOVRYN, she requested that, by and large, Sexoterica related questions should be in Sexoterica, right? Partly because it has a separate feed than the Master SOVRYN feed. And also, she wants to be able to respond to them and everything, which of course, and so some of what I'm going to talk about, I guess, will be ground covered a little bit again, of course, with more of, Ellen's brilliant touch. Like, really. Okay. She's the star of that show, not me. She is so much smarter than me, probably smarter than any of us. I mean, she took us all to fucking school on the Drake equation thing. And boy, that was something else I got a bunch of messages and emails and everything from, where people are like, wait a minute, what? And I mean, I'll say this here. When Ellen explained that actually the Drake equation says there's not a lot of intelligent life out there, that was one of the very few times in my life where I felt like, whoa, this is some Mandela effect shit. Because I know, even my father worked on the Voyager program, would talk about the Drake equation in the way that, yeah, it's saying, oh, there's life fucking everywhere, right? And I mean, we have some of the receipts to show that, like, Carl Sagan would sometimes kind of fudge shit a little bit, and a lot of people all basically said the same thing as me. It's like, yeah, no, I know I've heard Sagan talk about the Drake equation and saying that, like, it suggests that there's like life everywhere, when really the Drake equation is just it's just a thought experiment, like Ellen was saying. And there's a lot of different people that use a lot of different variables, their X and Y to solve for Z, right? So there are a lot of different groups that have used different math. And so, maybe it all got kind of convoluted in that, but I was just like, what the fuck? Like I told her, I'm like, why have a Fermi paradox if there isn't something that's suggesting that there should be life everywhere else? And that, as my understanding has been the Drake equation. I was just blown the fuck away by that. And thankfully, I'm not the only one. A lot of you were as well. And so anyway, like I said, Ellen's much smarter than me and likely smarter than us, meaning the audience. And I'm not insulting you. Okay. Quite the opposite. So man, anyway, okay. So not to get lost on that, because there's a lot to get into. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh, that I'm starting a cult or something? No, not. Okay. I tried. So what I was going to say was, those little like break-ins, cut-ins of audio where it's a British gal talking. Okay. I've told you this in previous SOVRYN Q&As. I make those. I write those. Okay. And then I get them made in 11 labs and everything. And, like have it go through that. And, and there's reasons for that, which I've talked about previously. I don't need to recover that ground, but understand, I write those. And I do that because it's such a great way to like compress that information without like a really long kind of question and answer session between Ellen and I. And I think it allows for efficiency in time, to just write it out, kind of as is. Okay. Now I purposely did not, or let's see. Yeah. I purposely set that up to where like I was trying to explain, hey, this isn't me making this shit up or talking about this shit or whatever else. This is stuff that's all over the place, even all over the world. And I tried to illustrate that, efficiently with, I guess what I'll call it third narrator audio. Okay. It's not, it doesn't escape my attention that the voice that I use is named Sophie, as in like Sophia. I did not choose that name for that voice, but it is the one that I chose, and maybe I did that unconsciously, but regardless. Okay. That third narrator, or if I'm to call her Sophie. Okay. Maybe at some point in the future, it'll be a different voice. If I decide that, we'll see. I don't know. Anyway, the funny thing is I actually took out some of what I wrote, just to like try and, and like save people, cause again, I'm so fucking conscious of this. When you start talking about, oh, we do these rituals and we do this and this is how we practice and blah, 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 that people think you're starting a cult, because holy shit, that's never happened in the libertarian space. Wink, wink. I mean, I've already been accused of this a million times, and not just accused negatively. I've had people accuse me positively over the past 10 years saying, oh, Stallion, you should have your own ism. In fact, it was called incendiarism, whatever. Or yeah, there was a point where I was like developing kind of my own philosophy. And I did a whole episode, not, kind of talking about it, but basically explaining, I don't want to be Elrond. I don't want this to be a cult. Don't come to me for all the answers, blah, blah, blah. I don't want this. Okay. And that was called observationism. Now, observationism, and really a lot of things that I espouse, have always been colored by the knowledge that is just now getting shared with you through Sexoterica. Okay? And you take it or leave it. Really. You take it or leave it. I don't care what you do. I really don't. If anything, I hope you find it to be a religious curio. Like, oh, well, that's interesting that this is actually translated that way, blah, blah, blah. And we'll get into all this stuff. But so there are people, and also including now, since I've been talking about this stuff on Sexoterica, I mean, we covered this in a previous Q&A, and we even covered it on part of that recent Sexoterica Q&A. What was it titled? Aliens, Demons, and All Things Sadducean. Okay. There are people who do want, like, they want to practice this. They want to be in on it. Okay. Again, like, I'm just going to, I'm going to talk about things that I think actually, like, shall we say, help the universe and help the human condition. All right. Again, you take it or leave it. I don't care. Okay. So there's positive and negative. There are people who are like, in fact, I got one email from a guy that, they were saying, what took you so long to start talking about this? Great. Okay. I'm glad that people are getting something out of it. That's the part of the reason I do it, is I want people to get something out of it. And also I want real solutions out there, because I am so sick and fucking tired of the legacy world that we live in. I am so tired. And I mean that in every way, mind, spirit, body. I am tired. And we are not going to solve this shit with technology, with electronics. It's not going to get solved that way. Because that's not striking at the root. If anything, it's creating even more, simulacra. It's creating, more bullshit, more matrix code over the reality. And this is nothing new for me to say. I mean, while I'm already quoting a movie, I'll quote another. And what I have said is like one of the greatest movie quotes ever from Blade. Yes, that Blade from Blade. The world you're living in is just a sugar-coated topping. There's another world beneath it. Boom. How long have I been saying that to you? Longtime listeners, you know how long I've been saying that to you. Probably since like episode 5 of Sovereign Tech. And there's thousands of those. So take that for what you will. Okay. So I don't have to spend this whole time defending me. But the main point I was going to get to is I actually like cut stuff out because I was concerned that people are going to be like, oh, he's starting a cult. But no, even though I cut all that shit out or whatever, and things that might piss people off a little bit, I still get the accusations. God damn it. So some of that audio I'm going to use going forward anyway. And like, really, I'm just not going to shy from it because whatever, no matter how hard I try, you're still going to get accused of this crap. So actually, I'll give you a preview. Now I'm going to use this. I already wrote this. I wrote this for the previous episode. I'm going to now, because of certain questions that I got, for Sexoterica, I'm going to use this in likely the next episode of Sexoterica. Like I said, there's points where in the beginning of those shows of Sexoterica episodes where, yes, there will be full Q&A episodes, but also there will be ones where, where like we'll just answer a quick question at the beginning of the episode, maybe to follow up from the previous, something like that. Okay. And this is probably going to be one of those situations. All right. But I'm going to play, you get a preview here of that audio. Okay. And the purpose of this audio was to do two things. Okay. So it's talking about the idea that there was a secret ancient priesthood. Nothing new for me to say. I've been saying that forever, right? Judaism within Judaism. How many times have any of you heard me say that over and over and over and over again? Okay. This idea is not unique to me. In fact, to, people who to some are considered some of the most brilliant people on the planet, they espouse this very idea. One in particular, who I'm a bit of a fan of. Okay, don't agree with him on everything, but I'm certainly a bit of a fan of, and I think we're moving towards the same goals. That being Alexander Bard. Okay, and I talk about in his book Process and Event, where he lays out how the Sadducees were actually practicing. They had a secret religion. There was a religion for the masses, and then there was the religion for the priesthood, which the Sadducees originally held. Before the temple was destroyed, and then it seems like they got wiped out. But newsflash, folks, as a descendant, I can tell you, no, they did not. Now, so part of that is to say, no, there's actually like legit, writers, philosophers, whatever, who also admit that this existed, that there was this, in the anthropological sense, a cult, a priestly cult, anthropologically, not modern day, and that it was the Sadducees, and that they had like belief systems that were secretive, were only talked about in the temple, and so on. Okay. Now, the other reason that I was pulling from, or that I did this audio that you're about to hear, is that it talks about that it wasn't just, in Judaism, that there are other religious traditions that had secret priesthoods that are attested to historically, just like the Sadducees. In this case, it'll be Zoroastrianism. Now, that's not uninteresting, and maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay. On Sexoterica, we have to be, we try to keep things tighter, okay, and to cover a lot of ground inside of an hour, and oftentimes it can end up being like an hour and a half when I add in Sophie's stuff. That ends up, sometimes I can go a little bit longer, okay, but we got to keep it really tight, so I can't go into long diatribes, as to where on the Master SOVRYN feed, I can do whatever I want, okay? So I might say some things here, even if I retread some of this. Again, the more interesting thing is to hear from Ellen, of course. Even though you might hear some of this on the upcoming Sexoterica, or one of the upcoming episodes, you'll probably get a little more expansion here. So, but let me cut to that audio. I want you to hear it, okay? And listen to it, and then please continue to listen to me afterwards to explain, okay? Here we go.
In philosopher Alexander Bard's co-authored book, Process and Event, the case and evidence for secret priesthoods throughout history abounds. Two in particular are discussed: the ancient branch of Zoroastrianism, known as Zurvanism, and the ancient Zadokite priesthood of Judaism, also known as the Sadducees. According to Bard, these secret priesthoods are not merely a preference, they are an absolute necessity for the survival of any meaningful civilization or religion. It is the very spine that holds a society upright, preventing its collapse into the chaos of infantile worship and nihilist meaninglessness. The core of this necessity lies in what he calls the Bard Absolute. Think of it as the Holy of Holies, the Additum, but for knowledge itself. It is a conceptual chamber containing truths so potent, so dangerous, that they would poison the masses if revealed. This is the realm of the priesthood, the only ones fit to enter. Dr. SOVRYN's Sadducean ancestors understood this perfectly. They were the guardians of a truth without supernatural phenomena, a stark and powerful monism that the common man, addicted to his comforting fables of rewards in the afterlife, could never handle. This secrecy serves two crucial, intertwined purposes. To protect the knowledge from the masses, the Bard Absolute shields profound, world-shaping truths, what Bard calls Tantra, from those who would cheapen and destroy them. The masses are given sutra, the public, digestible narrative meant for mimicry and social cohesion. But the Tantra, the crazy wisdom that cannot be imitated, is reserved for the priest, who can live in the infinite now. It is an incredibly arduous trek, not meant for the weak or the uninitiated. It is not to hide some trivial agenda, but to safeguard knowledge against undue insight. To protect the masses from the knowledge, Bard launches a ruthless assault on Gnosticism and its modern children, for blowing up the door to the Bard Absolute. By promising a direct, easy path to God, that all children at the party get a bag of candy, they infantilize society. They breed a contempt for knowledge and create weak, fragile souls who cannot face reality without a preschool teacher God. A secret priesthood, by its very existence, creates the necessary membrane of maturity. It tells the child he is not yet an adult, and the adult that he is not yet a priest. Without these boundaries, only suicidal nihilism and nanny states or nanny religions follow.
In essence, Bard argues that your secret priesthood is the engine of civilization. Zadokite priests and the Zervanite Zautars are the examples of what works. They are the ones who handle the terrible, beautiful truth that Zervan, time, is a demon god, or that the Zadokite reality is one of strict material monism, so that the rest of the world can function without shattering. To abolish the secret priesthoods is to abolish meaning itself, leaving only a banal soup of empty signs for a world decaying into mediocrity. That secrecy is not a relic. It is a vital, ongoing act of power and preservation. With this in mind, some matters that language can attempt to encapsulate can be described or alluded to, just as it is in Torah or other ancient texts of power.
Now, there we go. Look, Alexander Bard is an absolutely brilliant man. I mean, he really, really is. Like I said, do I agree with him 100% on everything? No. But he's brilliant. All right. And I am actually incredibly excited. He has a book coming out called, I think he's titling it, they might do a different title, but he has a book coming out soon called Sufism, which is obviously a play on Zoroastrianism and Sufism, as in the mystical aspect of, of Islam. I'm very excited to read that book and see what, kind of gets laid out in that. Now, Alexander Bard beautifully always states that he's not trying to change anybody. Okay. Like he is so whatever, live and let live. You do what you do. Like, I'm not trying to change anyone, but here's the reality of the human condition, of human nature, blah, blah, blah. Right on. I'm so with you on that, Bard. I really am. So Alexander Bard, now he's Zoroastrian, and yes, they still exist. Okay. His point about about Zervanism, the Zervanite movement within Zoroastrianism, and comparing that to basically the Sadducees, within Judaism. I mean, that's so spot on. And when I was reading Process and Event, that's not exactly what I was expecting the conversation to go to. Okay. Because I mean, the thing about Alexander Bard and his co-author, Jan, he's a Buddhist. Jan is anyway. The thing about their work, they were basically predicting what the internet was going to do to civilization, and they pretty much got it right. And they did it before anybody else. So they're very much philosophical rock stars. And rightfully so. Okay. I got my copy of Process and Event right behind me here on the shelf. And I mean, look, it's very, very deep reading. I wholeheartedly support anyone, opening up Notebook LM, pop in Alexander Bard's work. That way you can like kind of summarize and pull and ask questions and everything. It's really handy. But regardless, okay. So here you go. You have someone else highly respected who is, also saying, no, there is this secretive priesthood. Not only is there the secretive priesthood within Judaism, but there needs to be secretive priesthoods. There always needs to be these spaces where there are the secrets. Okay, because if it's all out in the open, it basically gets either perverted, watered down, whatever. And this is a part I really want you to hear me on. Because if you basically, like, let's say, what I described in the most recent Sexoterica Q&A, okay, if that priesthood, okay, that I described, if that, we'll say maybe modern day Sadducees, something like that, even though really it needs a different term, because part of the problem is, like the narrative around who the Sadducees were has been co-opted by Christianity, because Christianity, really Christianity's only defense is the obliteration, the burning, metaphorical and physical, and literal, of their critics. That's the only way Christianity survives. Okay. It is that, as Alexander Bard would say, and I agree with him, it is that weak of a religion. It cannot stand up to scrutiny, and it cannot survive without violence, without okay, we've got to wipe out the competitors, Now, arguments could be made that for certain, and Alexander Bard would say this as well, that certain, shall we say, denominations within Islam, could fall under the same thing. Okay. And as a Jew, I'll say this here and straight. That's just as true for Judaism. Just as true. There aren't as many denominations within Judaism as I think there are certainly within other Abrahamic faiths, except for maybe Baha'i, or a lot of other religions. But there are some within Judaism. It's like, you water down into nothing, and you're not going to survive the next century, with what you're trying to espouse as a beneficial, addition to the human condition. So I'm calling out everybody. Okay. Now, my point, this is the important point I want to get out there. Can you imagine, okay, considering, what are the stats that 1 in 20 people, or is it 1 in 10 or something like that, is like a sociopath or something like this? But just look around you. I mean, just imagine that you even if you just took it at a superficial level of this Sadducean priesthood. In fact, you know what? All right, hold on. Just so we have some clarity here. Okay, I am going to call this and I'm not making, this is for clarification. You will probably not hear, even if this is practiced elsewhere in the world, which I'm sure it is, secretly, you will probably not hear anyone else call it this, but I'll call it this. Okay, just for clarification. Just like Mark Gaffney, doesn't call, like his lineage, Judaism or Kabbalah, he calls it the Solomonic lineage. Okay, so I'll play that game as well. Or just like how Alexander Bard is saying Zufism or something like that, I'll play that game as well. Okay, this is the Samsonid priesthood, as in the biblical Samson. And if you're wondering about that, I've already done a whole Q&A about Samson and his relation to the priesthood, and I even discussed it in that Sexoterica episode. Okay, so let's just say at a very superficial level, you told people, or people were exposed, which you kind of already are with the Sexoterica podcast. You were exposed to the practices, the rituals, the lifestyle, even superficially, because we didn't go into too much depth, nor can we. At least not efficaciously, but also this speaks to the point of it needing to be secret. Okay. just that superficial level of the Samsonid priesthood practices. That is rife for abuse. Rife for abuse. And if you go telling people, even though the Samsonid priesthood and Kabbalah itself clearly states everybody is a god, right? You can listen to others about Kabbalah. Anyone that is not worried about their reputation, which they shouldn't be, anyone that's not worried about their reputation will tell you Kabbalah clearly states there is no monotheism. Doesn't mean there isn't monism, but there's no monotheism. Okay? So, doesn't mean that there isn't a source like the Ein Sof or something along those lines, but there is no monotheism. All you have to do is like understand the Sephirot to get that. So even though you're telling everybody they're their own God, their own Messiah, okay, their own myth, even though you're telling everybody that, there are people who would take these understandings, okay, and these interpretations. I'll be generous and say they're interpretations, even though that's exactly what it fucking means. I mean, it can mean multiple things, yes. So maybe interpretations is still a fine word, so let's go. And I mean, people just abuse the fuck out of this. And you already see it. Why? Because we already have sex cults that are fucking deplorable. So when Alexander Bard or myself makes an argument that, hey, this isn't something for the masses, there's a reason. Okay? Like there's a very good reason. And part of that comes down to understand these things at their deepest levels does require a process of education and initiation. It requires it. I won't back down from that. I know there's people who are listening to this who are going to disagree with me about that. And they think everything should be, all of this like spiritual technology should be open source. Nope. It doesn't mean that the people that have it are somehow better than anyone else. That's just not. How many times do I have to say everybody's a fucking god? Everybody, every single individual. I've always made this argument, even when I was just talking from a more Stirnerite stance. I've always said, what does really, what does egoism say? Not egotism, egoism. It says that you're the most important being in the universe, and so is everyone else. Yes, that's a paradox. That's where the truth is. I can't stress this enough. Somebody having secrets does not make them better than you by any metric. Okay, they know something you don't. That doesn't make them better. And there may be a reason that they keep that secret. So, it's funny. I have so much else to get into in this episode. We'll do what we can here, okay? I want to take a moment. Maybe it's helpful, okay, to explain, like, what is the purpose of these kinds of priesthoods? Why do they even crop up in the first place? Okay, so a couple points. That, and again, like, even if I'm not, like telling you all the names of everybody necessarily, because sometimes how can I even remember those, even though my memory is pretty goddamn good. Let me assure you that anything I say is by no means original on my part. If it is an original of some kind from me, I will tell you so. And also, you'll probably find me speaking it with a good amount of humility, saying that, putting a question mark at the end of everything, being a maybe. Can't say for certain. Okay? So, we need to go to, let's go way back. Okay? Back into time. We need to go to ancient Iran. And in Iran, this is where Zoroastrianism started. Okay? Now, depending upon who you ask, they'll say, oh, it started in like the 6th century BCE. I disagree. I am inclined to believe, and the reason they say 6th century is because that's when you start seeing like a lot of the writing and everything around it in the 6th century, or more populist writing. I would argue that actually it goes much further back, at least to like 2100 BC. So we're talking about a difference of about 1,500 years. Okay. That's kind of inconsequential, but we'll rock with it. Okay. I mean, and there's a reason to me thinking this. Okay. Now, something I've talked about on my show, Sovereign Tech, over the years is that there is, and I'm far from the only person to talk about. This is basically mainstream archaeology at this point. Okay. That the similarities, particularly in medical laws, things like this, the similarities between Zoroastrianism and Judaism are remarkable. Sometimes they're too good. It's like, whoa, who's copying who? Okay. Now, that is something where I've usually not provided an answer. And part of the reason being that, it's not something that I felt was worth talking about yet at that time. Okay. And folks, understand this very quickly, that the reason I concentrated so hard on technology over for over 10 years with Sovereign Tech is because at the time, things weren't set in stone very much like they are now, where basically everybody's ass is owned by Google, even Apple users admit it. Or whatever tech giant, your ass is owned, and you're not going to get any network effect or real traction that has any meaningful, in any meaningful way with others. So my point is that the tech world overall is not really a deep strike the root solution. It doesn't mean it's not useful. Of course, word processors are useful. Recording podcasts is useful. Even doing shit with AI, Notebook LM, or 11 Labs or whatever, all that shit is fucking useful. And you're going to get some powerful truth out there for sure. But it's not an end-all be-all solution. Okay, and the privacy war has already been lost. Make that abundantly clear. Okay, so that's why I focused on that. Now, okay, that battle's done. Let's go to, shall we say, let's level 1 this shit, okay, or level 2, or however you want to count it. All right. So, spiritual technology. Okay. The original technology for humanity. So we're in ancient Iran. Okay. Before even 2100 BC, Zoroastrianism doesn't exist yet. What do you have? In fact, Judaism, as you understand it, likely does not exist yet. What do you have? What you do have, okay, is, what you have is all right, to answer that question quick, and then I'll explain a little bit more. What you have is an even more ancient religion that both Judaism and Zoroastrianism sprung out of. That includes Kabbalah slash Sadduceans slash Samsonid and Zurvanism in the sense of Zoroastrianism. Okay. So, picture, if you remember out of the book of Daniel, right? There's the classic dream that Nebuchadnezzar has about this statue that's made of gold and silver and bronze, and then the legs are of iron, and then the feet are like a mixture of clay and iron, right? Okay, now, of course, the classic interpretation of this is that the head of gold is Babylon, the chest of silver and the arms of silver is Persia, okay? And then, the bronze loincloth is Greece, and then the legs of iron is Rome. Makes sense to people, of course. And then the feet is what's like Rome never really goes away, but it's mixed with clay, so it's divided, and there's 10 toes, and there's 10, barbarian tribes that were actually behind, not just the Visigoths, that were behind the destruction of Rome and, of the empire of Rome, that is. The Holy Roman Empire continued on, of course. But whatever, that's the popular interpretation. Now, what a lot of people miss in this, and I'll give credit to my Seventh-day Adventist teachers when I was young, because they didn't miss it, is that the chest and the two arms, okay, the upper body of silver is not just Persia. It's actually the Medo-Persian Empire, which people historically forget about, is that the Medes, and Persia, they basically, it was an alliance, they were one subsumed the other, however that all works out. Those kinds of things are always far more complex than your history books will tell you. Okay. And it makes sense because why? Because it's an upper body. So there's the chest and there's the two arms. It's two arms. So it's not just, and you can say, well, wait a minute, the legs, there's two legs. That's a whole other conversation to get into. Of course, the very simple answer is yes, it's Rome and Byzantium. The Byzantine Empire that was split. Like that statue, we could argue, predicted all of that, if you want to believe that. Okay. Dream interpretation is a huge deal, though, within Kabbalah, within the Samsonid priesthood, if I'm going to keep using that term, and what the hell, why not? Everyone else gets to make up their fucking terms. I will. Okay. So, while Zoroastrianism, is so well identified with Iran and with the Persian Empire, and rightfully so, okay, when you put the Medes, Medes, when you put the Medes into the equation, suddenly you end up with even more ancient, an even more ancient culture, okay, and a more ancient, actually, priesthood. In fact, it's a priesthood who, it could be argued, their most powerful figures are the priestesses, known as the Draconai. Okay, and this, so to understand, like this priesthood, this gets into so much, because there's a relation to, to the Gorgons, right? To like Medusa. Like, where does this idea of a woman having snake in her hair or whatever, that actually comes from? The Draconai had like snake poison, like they trained with snake poison in their rituals, and it was like leached in their hair to the point that they could like take their arrows and run the arrowhead in their hair, and it would literally, like, it was so thick that they become poison arrows. And so that's where that whole idea with the Gorgons, comes from. There's more to the Gorgons than that, but this is my point, is that this is Priscotheologia that we're talking about. These Draconai priestesses, they are absolutely carrying on that tradition, a tradition that would continue to be carried on by the Zervinites within Zoroastrianism and the Sadducees within Judaism, all the way to today, with other groups, as well as, as I've called it, the Samsonid priesthood. So you see, the reason that there's a similarity is not that Zoroastrianism copied from the Hebrews or vice versa. The reason is they are both offshoots of Priscotheologia. They are offshoots of something even older. Okay. And yes, that was at that time based in Iran. And to be clear, it's not Babylon. Okay. Babylon. Yeah. I mean, the Babylonian Empire did leach into what we call modern day Iran, but by and large, Babylon existed in what is modern day Iraq. So we are talking about something very separate from that. Okay. And really, and I've talked about this before, where Judaism very quickly starts to fall apart. And we're talking about like in the, 5th, 4th centuries BCE. Okay. Where Judaism really starts to fall apart is when they start pulling from, the Babylonian traditions, right? Like, for example, in fact, I did a whole user podcast about this, how like Rosh Hashanah, okay, the Jewish New Year, that's not the Jewish New Year at all. Okay. That's, I mean, it's not a made up, holiday, but it's a borrowed one from the Babylonians, in fact. Anyway, I've already covered all that before. So we are dealing with very ancient stuff. Very ancient stuff. And these are necessities that have been known for a very long time. So again, to get to my original question on this part, why do humans feel this need for a secret priesthood? Is it some kind of power over strategy? No. Nope. It wasn't with Zervanism. And in fact, if you thought the Zervanite, like the practitioners of Zervanism, if you thought that somehow, they were this, great and powerful force and they were running all the show or whatever. No, they were considered a heresy, and it was believed that they were wiped out because they did not have control. Okay. And very much the same for the Sadducees and whatever else. These priesthoods never have the kind of control that I think people would wildly imagine that they have. And part of that is because they ultimately want to be left in peace, because the mission of secret priesthoods, I'm not talking about the occult horseshit that some sick fucks in Hollywood or Washington, D.C. or anywhere, or in the EU or whatever, wherever, okay, that they're practicing. Whatever the fuck that crap is, that's because somebody let the cat out of the bag and they shouldn't have. I don't know. Okay? That's a separate subject. You want to ask me a question about it, you know how to reach me. But the reason that secret priesthoods naturally evolve is for the purposes of peace. Okay, so what you have is, and you can actually find this in Alexander Bard's work, it's in other people's work as well, but his is just very well condensed, and he also comes from a position that is very anarchist friendly. Even though he might want to claim that it's not. No, it is. So, anyway, so you have what would be called the shamanoid. Now, you've heard me use that term before, okay? You have a certain, just like, there's 1 in 20 people is a sociopath, okay? However, 1 in many, 100 or however many people could be called a shamanoid. It's somebody who is, for whatever varying reasons, and there are many, okay, has a closer attachment and is more adapted to the spiritual realm. Okay? These people, because they are playing on a, shall we say, a higher level, they're not better than anybody. Okay? If anything, it's a fucking curse. They're playing on a higher level and are able to, when 2 tribes run into each other, okay, the shamanoids in these tribes are able to communicate with each other because they play, they're communicating on a higher level. And they want peace. They want to be left alone. The secret priesthoods, they know. They know so much of what I laid out in that episode of Sexoterica. That it's all about love, and I know you think all these things are, really cute, but they're much larger discussions. Okay. Like the idea that value actually existed before there was consciousness, even things like this. I mean, these are massive metaphysical subjects that I'm just not going to get into here. You can ask me about them, please do. Okay, I'm happy to talk about them, but there's a goal here, and I want to get to that, and I want to get to some other questions as well, if we can. Okay, so the shamanoids are the ones. And that's why, the temple's always kind of built away from the city, whatever it's supposed to be. Christianity fucked that up because they fucked up everything. But, this is how all of this is supposed to work. And, these temples are like meeting places where people who speak the same, okay, shall we say, holy tongue, can communicate and peace can be had. Now, that doesn't mean that the priesthood is in charge of anything. Okay? No. But it is a vanguard in a way of making sure that life flourishes. Notice I'm not talking about kings and queens or any of that crap because those are not to be a part of the program, but whatever. Okay? I mean, all you have to do is read the book of Samuel to learn that one. But whatever. All right. And so what would happen is, just as an example, is that, say, 3,000 years ago, the Zoroastrianite priests would end up communicating with the Samsonid priests. Sadducees didn't exist at the time, but Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism did. All right. And that's really all the Samsonid priesthood is expressing, and wouldn't bother anybody, wouldn't go to blows, wouldn't go to war, whatever. I know Alexander Bard might say different things on that, but whatever. Okay, here we go. They would communicate, have an understanding, and things would basically work out from there. Because when you encounter another tribe, you're encountering a whole other language. You need some way to communicate with that other tribe. And the question becomes, what is the holy tongue? Well, actually, the holy tongue, as, like some Jewish sages and mystics have called it, okay, which is something that is beyond Hebrew. I'll say it's beyond Hebrew. It's that language that existed, say, before the Tower of Babel, right? I mean, this is, okay, something a lot of people also don't get is that, and Jews hate this when you bring it up. I don't, but most Jews, especially like your Orthodox Jews, they fucking hate this. There are words, I'm thinking of actually one in particular, okay? There are words in Torah, and I mean in Torah, not just the whole Tanakh, I mean in Torah, okay? where they don't have, they are foreign words. They are borrowed words from other cultures. Okay. There's a word that is not Hebrew that is used to describe, the tefillin that you wear between your eyes. That cube thing that you'll see Orthodox Jews wear. The word, part of the description for that, okay, and the reason why it has 4 sides and all this stuff actually comes from like a Phrygian term and another language. Okay. So, and the argument for like, wait a minute, how did these foreign languages end up in Torah, the most holy thing? It's not like, the characters are still Hebrew, but the language itself is absolutely recognized as borrowed from other cultures. How did that happen? Okay. This happens because, the argument would be from sages and mystics is that, well, it's because all languages come from the mother tongue or from the holy tongue. And these are just where, sometimes the holy tongue, other languages besides Hebrew can still have sparks of the divine within them, and they get brought into the fold. And so they come from this thing called the holy tongue. Now, take that interpretation for you. Well, I actually have a completely different, interpretation of why that is. That actually makes way more sense, because the Samsonid view would actually be more that the holy tongue is something that is beyond language. It is a, if we were to call it a language, it's really more of an experience had. It is an experience of empathy, of shared emotions to get to the truth so that there is no falsehood. Part of that comes out, admittedly, not always, not going to say this was always done this way, but part of that actually comes out through the sexual act. So it's no surprise when you go to this, shall we say, proto-Zervin, proto-Samsonid, or proto-Sadducean priesthood, that it was largely comprised of priestesses, the Draconai. So, remarkably, and they probably hit on this because of all the drugs they were doing, and Satan bless them for it, the hippies got it so right. Make love, not war. That's exactly what you fucking did. It's exactly what you did. That's what the priesthood did. And that's why there was a secret priesthood. Like all this stuff. No one's keeping something from you that is going to necessarily harm you. It is something that could be used against you, though, by people with the wrong motives. And by people who do not, go through the proper educational process and even initiation process to show, that they can get through it. Okay. Oh man. I could talk about this for hours. And some of it could come off sounding kind of harsh. When I want to be harsh, I have no problem being harsh. But there's times I don't want to be harsh, and I don't want to say things that could hurt people. Okay, over things that they shouldn't be heard over, in my opinion. But I get the sense that they would. There's a lot I want to talk about this. But one of the things that actually I got a lot of criticism about when talking about the whole, basically the Samsonid priesthood, okay, is that it sounded like there was a lot of physicality. Like you had to be top of your game in health. And I'm not saying you have to be that, but I am saying that in the text, yes, that's part of it. And I think it can come off. It's not, look, this is why I worry. Okay. I'm just going to fucking say it. This isn't true for everyone. Okay. But I hope as well as I do. All right. There are a lot of people who have been shit kicked their whole life, whatever. Incels are a thing. I think people on the left and right, the woke and not woke or whatever, I think they all kind of agree. Yeah. Incels fucking exist. Okay. And incels use the advantages, the level playing field technologies of modernity to get their way. Okay. Because they're just pissed off that they're not over 6 feet tall or whatever the fuck is pissing them off. And they are vengeful. They don't like that a certain girl didn't, go for them, whatever the fuck is, behind whatever the hell they're feeling. Okay. Now give those people technologies, spiritual technologies that can literally alter the source code of the universe? No. No, thank you. Okay, so part of the reason that there are, shall we say, that in ancient times there were physical requirements, and this went beyond even the priesthood. Part of the reason that there were physical requirements was, I would argue, a intuitive understanding that when you hand certain tools to the wrong person, bad shit happens. And part of the education and initiation process is making sure that a person has the understanding and the ability and are coming from the right place to use this stuff. Now, if somebody's not like so physically fit or whatever, or not well or whatever, does that make them a lesser person? Not even close. This is where people get so fucking confused. Everybody is so either or in their thought. Nobody cares about nuance. Nobody thinks that there's a third way. It's always, no, it's left versus right. You know, it's blah, blah, blah. And if anybody's a centrist, well, they're probably still woke. And so fuck them, you know, like, I mean, like the internet's fucking killed us. It's fucking killed us. I don't want to get lost on this, but boy, I loved it. You know, I've always said to you, your computer is your only country, right? I actually heard Steve Gibson on Security Now say the other day, he said the most beautiful thing that plays right off of that phrase of mine, that the computer is your only country. He said, the internet is a hostile foreign power. He was talking about the internet, capital I internet, the internet as itself in its abstractness and totality. The internet is a hostile foreign power. That was his term. Fucking awesome. I made a wallpaper out of that so fast. I made a video out in Veo 3. Like, I mean, just like that. That's some hard truth, baby. And it is the truth. Now, can you defend against it? Can you take advantage of, like, you know, the land that you go upon, like 11 Labs or, you know, some other websites or podcast services and all that? Sure, of course you can. But the default mode of thinking should be the internet is a hostile foreign power coming for you. The internet has destroyed our capability for nuance. It has destroyed our capability to even see reality. There's too much simulation in front of us. No, it's not simulation theory. We don't live in a computer. Not really. Our, you know, the objective world outside, yes, there's an objective world. The objective world outside of us is not a simulation. Okay. But it may as well be. And I mean, I think I was talking about this with Sec the other day, you know, just like, like people know, you know, that they need something more, that there's something more to existence. Okay. But because they've spent too much time on a computer or too much time in front of their smartphone, all they can think is, no, there's no God, but there's a computer. And that computer is reality. Why? Because for them, their computers and their smartphones and whatever's in front of the screen is more real to them than the tree that hopefully sits outside of their house. It's more real. These people cannot grok reality because reality is only ever a foot or two in front of them. Everything beyond that is bullshit to them. And so people can't have nuance. And again, this goes all over the place. You know, I mean, all right, here, quick example. Who are the two most unhealthy people on the planet? And by unhealthy, I mean at greatest risk to die. The two most unhealthy people are those that are morbidly obese. That's why we use the word morbid. Okay. Oh, no, you telling me I can't be overweight? No. I don't give a shit what you do. I don't care how many Doritos you eat. You understand? And I love you. I do. I don't care. But it doesn't change the reality that extra weight and everything else is making your heart go that much harder. And you're at greater risk for heart disease, number one killer in the world, besides the U.S. government. So that's number one. Or that's one of them, because they're equidistant. Okay. What's the other most unhealthy person in the world? I want you to type in MrOlympia.com, or maybe it's just Olympia.com, or go to bodybuilding.com. And I want you to look at those fucking mass monsters. those are also the most unhealthy people on the planet. Why? Because they're putting on that much pounds. Their heart, and they're pushing that hard. Their heart is just as much at risk of heart disease, of failure, of death, as the morbidly obese person. Nobody talks about that, though. Because everybody just looks at it with a complete lack of nuance, and they're on Instagram, so Instagram just, the algorithm so works for the freaks. And I don't mean that in the good way. You're just like, oh, these people are so healthy. Oh, they have women all over them, blah, blah, blah. What good is a bunch of women all over you if it's all superficial and you have no real connection with anyone? Fuck that shit, for one. But for two, that person's so goddamn drugged up and overweight in their own way. I know you say, well, but it looks healthy. I can see his abs. You're not supposed to see people's abs. I mean, it's okay if people get down to that, but like, look, men, they're not supposed to be in like the single digit, percentage of body fat. I think optimum would be more like 13. Of course, a lot of people would still be amazed by that, but you get my point. Okay. These people are unhealthy, wildly unhealthy, mentally and physically. Opposite ends of the spectrum for most people, but that's the reality. Again, there's no nuance. Nobody understands, kind of I don't want to say the middle ground. I don't like using that kind of term. So that's where we're at. So before anybody says, you got to be this, I'm not telling you to do fucking anything, ever. Hell, I even tried that. I tried for 10 years to do a tech show where it's like, no, fucking use Linux, use this, use that. Like, stop, because we got to put a stop to these fucking tech giants. We got to stop the surveillance of the U.S. government, whatever. And nothing changed. Granted, is my audience that big? No, but I was hoping that these practical solutions that existed at the time that aren't practical anymore, even if they still exist, just hoping that would like kind of blow up. But of course it wasn't going to. And this is something that I need, really, like, that I should have realized. And believe me, do I think I'm the smartest person on the planet? Not even close. I was a fucking idiot for thinking. I was an idiot for thinking that people would jump on top of like secured, open source stuff, open hardware, blah, 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 all that. I was an idiot. Why? Because here's the thing. Most people don't like computers. They like what they do for them, but they don't like computers themselves. Okay. And if you're not actually passionate about, like the abstract concept of a computer in and of itself, and of like, encryption and all, like, you don't care. You don't care, and I mean, the other thing here, I'll tell you this, the other thing that worked against that, the other reason, here's the real reason the privacy war was lost. Marijuana got legalized in, not all states by any stretch, but many, in enough centralized locations to where people from other states could easily get their fix. Okay. That's it. Marijuana absolutely destroyed destroyed privacy once that got legalized. It also, in my opinion, aside from Trump, is the thing that ended libertarianism. Once marijuana got legalized, libertarians were just like, oh, all right, whatever. I don't care now. I'll just go smoke my shit. I'm good. I'm not going to get attacked by the cops, so I don't care that the cops exist. Oh, did that hurt? Sorry. I guess there's just a lot of uncomfortable truths here in this podcast. I'm so sorry. Oof. Thing I'm worried about, I already lost patrons over that Sex Terrica episode. Already lost followers on the podcast. Like, got nothing to lose, folks. So, moving right along. Do I have a problem with people doing marijuana? No! Do whatever the fuck you want! Holy shit! How long have I had to say that for people to finally get that that's what I mean? Hot damn! Hey guys, I'm with you now. Like, I do drugs too. I don't do marijuana, but I do some shit. Aren't you happy that I evolved a little bit? Oh, but he doesn't like marijuana. Stop. Stop it. Nuance. 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 One belief does not equate the other. get that through your goddamn head. And if you can't, well, now you know why some priesthoods keep shit secret. I mean, the problem, while I'm on the fucking subject, okay? Because, yeah, okay, I was pretty stupid to think that people would actually be, interested in, like, technological solutions and would take it the distances they need to go. I do. I'm not kidding. I feel like an idiot for that, okay? The other part that I kind of realized, and part of the reason I want to focus more on spiritual technologies, okay? The other part that I very much realized is that, I used to, for a while there, I was espousing something called System D. Now, that's a French concept of like building kind of an alternative to civilization. Okay. That term basically got killed in most English speaking countries because Linux decided to go with something called System D. Anyway, not just Linux, but, so others have come out, like I'm thinking of like Jim Rutt, guys like that, where they espouse this concept called Game B, okay, where it is this alternative, like civilization, this alternative method to civilization, because their belief is that basically we've got about 60 years left to turn things around before what they call Game A, which is the legacy system that we live in, eats itself into nothingness, destroys itself. Overall, I don't disagree with their premise and overall what they think. And there's some interesting ideas within that, for sure. One of the things I do like that many like Game B, shall we say, theorists, that Game B theorists will, talk about is that if you are looking for solutions to the present problem using the methods of Game A, right? This reminds us of, a classic Albert Einstein quote. Like you can't use the thing that created the problem to solve the problem, however that goes. You can't use the methods of Game A to achieve Game B, or you're already, or maybe more accurately, what they would say is that you're already poisoning the well of Game B once you're using Game A methods. Okay. And this is a major problem with any movement for some kind of societal social change, including libertarianism / anarcho-capitalism / anarcho whatever the fuck you fucking fuck. And that is a lot of these people, yeah, they say they want freedom, but they don't want it to be too different from what it is now. And libertarians and anarcho-capitalists are perhaps the most egregious on this one. Like, yeah, but I still want my air conditioning. Yeah, I still need this. I still need that. Yeah, and whatever. Yeah, no, I don't believe in German new medicine. I don't, blah, blah. Yeah, no. I get it. Not everybody's me. I mean, me, I would give up everything. Every creature comfort I'd give up. My computers could all get thrown into the lake of fire. My Switch 2 could get launched into space and fuck that shit. And who knows, maybe it'll, entertain some aliens or something, whatever, it can all burn. It can all go away. If I could just live how the fuck I want to live and live without the stress of like, holy shit, I got to work, 80 hours a week and blah, 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 just to be able to like have a roof over my fucking head. It can all go away. None of it matters. None of it. Give me my wife, my friends. Life's good. Maybe a few books. Can I keep those? But that's the problem. And it was something over the years I was always trying to interject into my show. Like, yeah, no, we need, I mean, and longtime listeners will know what I'm talking about. We need to literally change the way we do math. We need to go with base 12 math. I'm not kidding about this. And I still believe it. Hell, even sometimes when I say the number 10 in like private conversation, I say deck instead of 10. Look it up. Look up about base 12 if you haven't heard, maybe it's been a while since I've talked about it. But you can also hit up a search engine and you can find the episodes where I did duodecimal math. We have to think in completely new ways. Okay? How about time zones? I've always argued for a universal time zone. Get rid of the time zones completely. But what about it? No, I've already given answers. So have many others. Not my idea. It's a great idea, though. 24-hour clock. Stop this dumbass American shit. Okay, really. With PM and AM. So many little things. The calendar. You know, I've argued forever for the Holocene calendar, right? Where you add on 10,000 years so that you recognize, like, say, things like Göbekli Tepe, and you recognize the achievement of humanity overall, even in that short time period. Because I think humanity's history goes back many more thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps more. I mean, in the Samsonid priesthood, like, there's a wholly different calendar. It's the Enochian calendar. You can look up about it. Now, there's different, like, holidays within that or whatever, and there are ways, because you're going to read, I know what you're going to do. You're going to go, oh, the Enochian calendar. Wow, this sounds fucking occult and mystic. This is awesome. I'm going to use this. And then suddenly you're going to realize, wait a minute, why is spring starting in what the, Julian or, or Gregorian calendar, says it says it's December. How is it spring? That's because there's, again, it's education. And you have to understand what years that you need to add a week. And this gets into, parts of like the book of Leviticus or whatever. Like, you have to have the keys to unlock this stuff. You can't just run roughshod with it. Otherwise, you're going to be like, what the hell? I planned for a vacation in November, and here I am in my swim shorts and flip-flops, and motherfucker, it's, it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, we should switch to Celsius? Yeah, sure. I mean, most of the world runs on that. But I mean, my point is, there are so many of these little things where we have to completely rethink the way that we think. It's not just about building alternatives, okay? Like as in physical buildings or in alternatives to, oil and petrol and, and all this other crap. No, I mean, you have to change literally the way you think if you ever want to get out of the domination structures that you are within. You have to completely rethink. Throwing out the baby with the bathwater? Maybe. But then maybe it was an ugly baby anyway. So why not? And by ugly baby, I mean Trump. Anyway, so people don't want to go far enough. They don't. People are lazy. And that's not even a bad thing. It's good. I'm glad. Everybody talks about like people being lazy. I am glad that humans seem to be programmatically leisurely. They don't want to work. Good. This is not a bad thing. That's another part of the rethinking that has to be done in this world. Stop judging people based upon their productivity. That's a shit metric to put on anyone or anything. That's for fucking overlords, not human beings. Not decent people. Judge them on their kindness. Judge them on their ability to love. Judge them, yes, indeed, on how well they treat those close to them, especially their children. Because if we judge people based on that, unfortunately, I think we'd find a lot of shitty fucking people. Walking around claiming that they're, I'm making sure that the population problem doesn't, isn't there? I'm doing what Elon said. Holy fuck. All right, one last bit of my history. I got to tell you, the one thing where I don't feel like an idiot, and I feel so proud, pride is a good thing, where I feel so proud, is that I never said a nice fucking word about Elon Musk. Even when everybody thought, he's amazing. Oh, he's fucking Iron Man, whatever. I said back then, I said, no. Unlike you asshats, I've actually read the Iron Man comics, and the natural progression of that character is he becomes a villain over and over again. Look what happened. Oh, that prediction was spot on. I never said anything good about Trump. Never supported Trump. I lost thousands, probably 10,000 listeners during 2016. You know that? Why? Because I wouldn't bend the fucking knee to that fucknut. People came back. Some listeners came back after he dropped the Moab, and they're like, oh, we were wrong. And that's okay. You have the right to be wrong. But I'm proud of myself for never talking good about these people. Same with other fucking slapnuts like Jordan Peterson. Fuck that idiot. Man, people look to him on how to interpret the Bible. Holy shit. We're screwed. Imagine giving that guy the keys to what Torah actually says. Oy. Next thing you know, everybody's going to turn into crabs and going to be fucking each other. Or lobsters, right? It's lobsters. That's what he's obsessed with. I know, that's years ago. Whatever. He's just gotten dumber. It's not your book, Jordan. Sorry. I'm so proud of myself because I can read people in 5 goddamn minutes, even from afar. So, I did have other questions to get into, but I don't know. we kind of rock stuff. I got a great comment on YouTube about my musical taste, and I mean it. Like, the person disagreed with me, but I love it. I love the conversation, and I think I'm going to save that for another Q&A. I have to get another one out this week anyway. I had a ton of people asking me about Hulk Hogan. I do want to talk about that. I do have an episode about crypto coming up. That's a whole other thing where I mean, it's really a great way to close this one out because, again, I'm going to do a whole episode on it, and I'm not saying there isn't value within blockchain technology, okay? But what I am saying is, man, clearly, we all thought Bitcoin, oh, it's this new way of thinking about money. It's this new way of thinking about, apparently not. Because, we have this one stupid question. And this is not new for me to say. I've been saying this for years. We have this one stupid question. I was saying this back when I was on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. We have one stupid question. How much is a Bitcoin worth? The minute somebody asks that, they have no interest in freedom. They have no interest in getting away from the legacy system. They have nothing in that head. Because that is the wrong question. Because you're not really valuing Bitcoin then. What are you valuing? Your local fiat currency, the dollar, whatever. You missed the point. You think Bitcoin is, this is the revolution, this is changing shit? No, it's valued in US dollars. You fucktards. It's not the direction this was supposed to go. Oh well. But we'll save that for another episode because, again, like I said, it's not that there isn't value within that. There is value in being able to have a way of programmatically, secreting away, potentially secreting away, monetary value, okay, into something digitally. Of course there's value in that. Just like encrypting communications, of course there's value in that. Even if someday it could get broken. For right now, is it getting you past certain legal, hurdles and concerns and whatever else? Sure. Okay, great. Good. But don't pretend that it's changing the system when it's just getting baked in. But we'll save that conversation for another time. So, with all of that, I hope you enjoyed it. And I can't wait, to see you all on the next Sexoterica. I'm going to hold out that it's going to be like Romper Room. I'm going to hold out that magic mirror, and I see this person, I see this person, I see this person. And boy, after about maybe 5 people, there's probably, the mirror is suddenly going to go empty, because I want my Netflix, please. Don't take away my Netflix. I'll do anything. If that offended you, Don't look at your screen. Go look in a mirror. And I'll wrap up with that. I'll see all of you, on the other side.